you say some really interesting things about football as a game, and I think we can talk about that as well. I mean, I think the very first line of the book is it's indefensible, and yet I come to its defense. So I think that's worth talking about. There's also a question you ask, why, right? Like, why did you suit up? And, at 60, going in and playing with a bunch of 20-year-olds. That's, a key question in the book. And one point you say, um, winning makes everybody get along, right? But you weren't winning that year.
Yeah, no, there was some strife and I won't say conflict, but yeah, it started to get on, even though it was an abbreviated season, it started to get on some players' nerves. And yeah, it is a fine line between, and that's why it's a team sport. It is a fine line between everything working really well, all of the many pieces clicking and moving along in that incredibly complicated uh process that a successful play or successful series contains. But you put the pressure of losing or of you know mistakes that are really kind of unforgivable, easily avoided mistakes, and it it can all unravel pretty darn quickly. And you can see it on another team when another team's experiencing that um, almost random delamination, and you can see it in your own team. And conversely, you can see it, the pieces come together on a drive, on a series, as a result of one or two um, performances on one play by a couple individual or two. It's I guess it's not an original analogy, but like trying to get a fire started. You have a little twig and a little kindling, a little this and that, some dry grass, and it's not light, and you move around, put the match on another side, another twig, and it starts out ragged. Then when it does catch it, it's a nice even flame. And yeah, it's surprising how fragile and vulnerable momentum is what they call it in the sports casting.
Yeah.
Um, how how yeah, delicate it is. Um,
There are some players and coaches, I think, who basically don't believe in momentum. And maybe that's the statistician's view.
the stats that you're referring to are fascinating. The next gen um, statistics that really have bearing. It's changed the way football is coached and to some degree played. Yards after catch, yards before contact, yards after contact. These ratings on coverage, on throws, catchable balls, uncatchable balls. It's yeah, it's a deep dive into the brain of the sport. There's just so many possibilities in any one moment of any one play of any one game. That you've got 22 people running around out there really fast and bouncing off of each other and rolling around, and there's one ball in the midst of those 22 people, and the permutations are essentially infinite of what can happen. Um, it's all familiar, but it's also all never exactly precisely how it was anywhere else in any other game.
Which is why I think a big reason why people love it. That the randomness, the unpredictability, the sameness, but the infinite possibility within the sameness. Um, another question I want to ask is you write that football is changing, the fans, the players, the coaches, and in fact, I think the phrase you use is changing its own self. And are these sort of statistical emphases part of that, or is it something else you mean?
I think several, internal and external factors that are causing it to evolve. It's always evolved. I mean, we go through cycles and of run heavy philosophies and pass heavy and different defenses and down linemen, three hands on the ground, standing up. You know, it goes in waves and cycles. Within the closed system of the rules, which themselves also change little by little, year after year, until finally they have some significant changes from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, whatever. Um, but listening to you talk about it, I think of how why we love it, why we're fascinated by it as fans, why we watch, anticipate a certain matchup, a certain game each week. Abe, it's never going to be the same. It's like football is kind of an organic or animated 3D manifestation of our species' relationship with story. A beginning, middle, and end. Somebody wants something, they go after it, they encounter conflict, they win, lose, or draw in the pursuit. There's resolution at the end and understanding something's changed, and people have learned something. That's how we came of age as a species, being in caves and such, telling stories that conveyed important information. Our brains developed a sense of story to communicate really important information, emotional information, physical information, cause and effect information, where to go, when there's a drought, which animals to eat when, which animals to avoid when, on and on. So our brains are built for story, but a story is, it gives us, reading a story or listening to a story, your brain waves are going to track as if you were a good story with, the five senses engaged in the prose. Your brain activity is going to be the same as if you were actually experiencing it. You will have entered the dream. And that's a wonderful and powerful thing. And again, we have a predisposition, an affinity for that state, that condition. But football is like that. That book is become an animal, and it moves around on its own free will. It's still got the story guidelines, but nobody, and I mean nobody, knows what's going to happen in the next sentence. And there is no author. The players are the authors, and the fans watch the sentences being written. But it has that same allure, that story allure to it. But it's just so hyper real.
Sure.
There is blood, there is sweat, there is the sound of the impacts. You smell it, hear it, see it, feel it, taste it. Uh, all the five senses. And it's complex. It's as complex as the brain itself. It's odd to talk so affirmatively or about the sport, because it is art, it is artifice, it is artificial, it is played on artificial turf. It has bounds that are kind of somewhat not random or arbitrary, but it has constraints. It's not as wild and organic as life, or and animals in the forest or such, but it's quite a hybrid between storytelling and theater and the law of the jungle, I suppose, for lack of better
Interesting. And there
phrasing.
was that propulsive sense of what happens next, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like a story. I mean, at one point, you liken what happens on the field as complex characters, complex events um, unravel to writing a novel.
Yeah, no, a good novel, you're writing one, you don't know the end. You might think you know the end, but if it's always wise to be open to the end changing as a result of the events that preceded the end. And yeah, it's the same way. I love, one of the things I love most about football is the tyranny of the clock, which we dread in real life, but on the field, knowing that you have this many chances, you have a finite number of minutes in which to strive. And that snow globe quality is fascinating. And in compression there is power, and compressing all of that passion and desire into 60 minutes is it's messy and hot and wonderful. And yeah, it's a shame that it destroys, bodies, which it
Yeah,
does.
bodies and brains, as you write
Part
about.
of the body. Yeah.
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 Um, to to what extent do you think our current consciousness, which is probably only what 15 years old, of the degree to which it, you know, uh, destroys brains and bodies, um, is causing A, changes in the game, and B, changes to the way people think about it?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's definitely a work in progress. I mean, we know enough. We don't know everything. We don't even know what we don't know, but we know enough to know that it kills the brain. What 113, 117 of the brains in that Boston hospital, one of the 117 did not have the CTE. The punter had CTE, and it's yeah, we're learning year by year. We're behind the curve. We're not learning enough fast enough, but there's enough evidence, yeah, that impacts um, damage brains and cumulative effects. The more impacts there are, the more widespread, greater the risk of the damage. And I think what my understanding of the science is that it's not just the major impacts, the violent collisions that create the CTE, but the again a great number of low level impacts can be as damaging or more damaging than a small handful of very violent singular events, and that's terrifying. To like a lineman who 50, 60 plays a game, he's only you know has 3 yards of acceleration into the opponent, and you've got 200-300 pound men kind of just wrestling around, but that's not nothing. And even though they get up, they dust off, they go back to the huddle, they do it again, all game long and all practice long all week. Those those low level jigglings are what we don't understand, and are kind of frightening, in
Yeah,
addition to the big dramatic ones.
I think so too. And thinking about young athletes, right? I mean, I've heard that the second most prevalent sport for just concussion, so not CTE, but concussion, is actually girls soccer. Um, and I mean, as a parent, you've really got to think about, you know, letting your kid and the sports system in the U.S. hasn't really persuasively accounted for this. Anyway,
Yeah. No,
um,
it is indefensible, whether it's soccer or football. We shan't talk about boxing. That's a
all right.
no-brainer. But the sports that our culture has evolved with, and that have become elevated in our cultural uh, portfolio. Yeah, we there's as with so many things, there's a hidden accounting,
Yeah,
shadow
yeah.
accounting.
So one of the things that you write about in Wrecking Ball, extensively and very persuasively, are about the hits that you took, right? I mean, the injuries that you sustained and um, the experience of walking off the field and going to your friend's house and, feeling these constant stabbing pain, doing even the simplest action and how this, stayed with you. And the Express as a semi-pro club doesn't have the resources that, NFL teams do for player rehabilitation. I mean, the ice baths and all this kind of thing. Um, so I guess I have two questions. One is, at the age of 60, why'd you do it?
I'm not I'm not sure I have an answer for that. I guess because I loved it. When I thought about it beforehand and when I think about it after, running back's an interesting position. You're the farthest away person. You're the deep back. You're the backseat driver. You have those 22 people. You have the best view of the other 21, and you can see it unfold, and you see paths open and close, and um, It's a lot like writing. Except it's physical. It's like the physicality of writing. You see an opportunity for a phrase or a sound to move into the paragraph, and you bend it that way, and that creates an adjustment in the tone and tension, electricity of the paragraph, and you seek to get to the end of the paragraph in artful, sinuous, sometimes abrupt form. It's just a really familiar uh, neural pathway for me, and one that I love. And football uh, is that feeling come real. It's and that's just addictive. That's so I couldn't say no.
So knowing that it had been what, something like 40 years since you'd stepped onto a field. What was it like when you first suited up and stepped on the field with the Express after that period of time?
I think I think when I was airborne in that Red Raiders game, it was my 63rd birthday. So, and the last time I'd played was 18 in Utah, freshman year. So whatever that is, 45 years. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, I It was fun. It was fun. It was excellent. It was really excellent.
Outside your role as reporter, right, writing about the team, covering the team, um, what role did you play on the team? I mean, strictly,
Mm.
like, filling holes, or I mean, what did coach use you for?
That's a great question. It was uh I can't answer for coach on, on some of my thoughts on that matter, but uh it was a great pleasure to chronicle his complex personality, his high standards and high goals, and yeah, he doesn't paint with a small brush. He has big dreams, big actions, he's a big personality, and so that was really wonderful and uh, amazing to be around. Just running back was my position, but also would be on all the kickoff teams, um, both kicking and receiving. We had, as you noted earlier, quite a an absence of players. Some games we would barely have enough to get out on the field, so both players would be playing both positions, offense and defense, and special teams. So I was on all the special teams. I didn't carry the ball much as a running back. The times that I did were memorable. Uh, I There were games. I was thinking about this afternoon. There were games where we would lose a defensive lineman, and we would have nobody there, and we'd have to get somebody to fill that slot. And there was one series where I went out and was on the defensive line, rushing the quarterback, which was, they advise you to try and do something different each day, something you haven't ever done before, and that was definitely one of those days. Uh, and
You write about actually finding the gap, seeing the quarterback in front of you, and feeling like you have a
I
chance.
haven't, I haven't looked at the game film, but my recollection is I got down on all fours and crawled between their legs and then stood up, and um, it was a bit of a bit of comedy.
um, Staying with coach for a minute, you you write in the introduction to Wrecking Ball that in part that the players loved the game but did not need it. What they needed, I think, was coach. Um, Talk about that for a minute.
It was really touching. They were so young, and I mean, he wasn't so old, but he must have seemed ancient to them. I mean, he was a gray beard. His beard stubble would be gray if he hadn't just shaved. That's kind
I
of
know the feeling.
yeah, no, right. So that he might as well have been ancient to them, and he was a repository for any life information they had. I never did the math. I probably should have as a reporter, but a significant number of them were from single parent families or were raised by grandparents, and Coach was, for better or worse, an anchor of paternal authority in their lives, and dispensation of patriarchal information, and they were hungry for it. This is again a generalization, but it's an informed one, and he would advise them about this and that and everything. I think, in the book I write, I don't know what chapter it was, maybe before the Bison game. It was it, it was before, yeah, it was before a game in Austin. And at the end of practice, he's advising them. He's usually pretty jocular, but he got really serious and was saying, okay, you guys are about to go on the most dangerous journey of your lives. You're going to drive 90 miles from Brenham to Austin for a night game. And if you get stopped and pulled over, your life is at stake. And here's how you need to respond. Here's how you need to act. Here's what you need to say. And he was just so intense. He's a preacher, and he just had that incandescent, pastoral intensity, and they were just listening breathless. And it was so much more than if he was describing, when that safety turns his hips, you break inside. I mean, he was giving the same kind of technical information, but this wasn't about winning a game. This is about saving their lives. And and that's when I kind of thought, like, wow, this is real. I'm in the middle of this huddle listening to this sermon, and it certainly, I mean, I obviously carry, white privilege, dripping off of me, but whenever I get pulled over at night, highway patrol, I follow coach's advice, just out of to make it just yeah, just to avoid, just be situationally aware. Yeah, because um they want to know where your hands are at all times. You don't reach for anything. I mean, you don't reach for anything. If you do, yeah. Anyway,
So, I mean, this is one aspect of what's the subtitle of your book, right? Race, friendship, gun, football. And what you're describing, I think, is an older, experienced African American man talking to young, impulsive, in some ways undisciplined African American men about, look, this is going to save your life. This is important. Um, so, I mean, I'm curious about other ways in which sort of race was manifest on the field or in the huddle.
yeah, less than one might imagine, perhaps, and that was wonderful tonic for me, because I went in thinking, oh shit, I'm the only white guy on the team. If Wyatt the quarterback is not there, then I'm the only white guy on the team, and what's that going to be like? And it wasn't like anything, which is one of the beauties of sport. But I think you're alluding to, the time off the field and between things. It was just simple little stuff like they point to a guy across the field and say, who is he? Who's the one you're talking about? Oh, he's that white guy over there, and it's like yeah, the white was not the default um, uh, descriptor or identifier, and that was wonderful. It was so healthy, and I was just so grateful, just hanging out with him. Uh, it was COVID. COVID came, and that was the that was the dramatic arch of the story, uh, and we didn't see that coming. Obviously, anybody, but we were riding around in coach's truck, and they were talking. The players and coach were bantering about yeah, about COVID and about Trump and the president at the time, and so on and so forth. And at one point, coach says, that crazy old white guy, and he looked back. No offense, Captain Rick, and it's like it was sweet, and um, yeah, I mean, I used the word accountability earlier, and I don't know I don't know what the numbers line up to, the pluses and minuses. There are pluses, there are significant pluses in the sport of football that uh, pay out over the course of a life, and there are significant costs that also pay out over the course of a life. And I think that accounting is going to show a different value at different points in different people's lives. But there were some really sweet, wonderful rises of amplitude in my quiet life um, for the year that I played with them and was with them.
That's sounds like a gift.
Yeah.
Is that part of the friendship that you're talking about? I mean, A, the fact that, race was nothing, as you say, but the bonds that between the players and that, that you sort of walked into and formed some yourself.
Yeah, I mean, race is fraught. It always has been. It always probably will be. But that again, not to, you know, hammer the point, but the sport gave us each and all a shorter on-ramp to relationships. It's not that we didn't notice that I was white or that I didn't notice who was black or who was brown. It's that we were moving so fast towards something together, shared and desired, that we didn't have time to really pay it any attention or to even, it was just, there's a red bird, and then you just go on to, get the milk at the grocery store or something. It was refreshingly and wonderfully, invigoratingly, uh, insubstantial. And it was artificial, yeah, because again, it's on the field, but it was really nice. And I think I mean, players talk. That's the number one thing they miss when they leave the sport. It is the not the game, but the relationships.
Right. Um, so this leads me into asking about, really the third big element in your in the subtitle to Wrecking Ball, which is God. And you talk about Coat. I mean, you mentioned him a few minutes ago as a preacher, right? But to what extent does God, religion, um, enter um, the ecosystem of the game?
Mm. Great question. It was uh, it was prevalent. Religion was one of the tenets of the league. Um, I don't remember the actual mission statement, but it was in there. And this is a generalization, but the games would begin with a very heartfelt and intense prayer. Um, it tickled me pink when Coach would pray, so earnestly to, help beat the living tar out of the opposition, and then we'd go out in the field, and religion would not be a part of it. And then after the game was over, it was the closure, the bookend. The players, it's like a transition where they come back from being this hyper animate, animalized spirit existence, heightened heightened existence, back down into humanity, into human being human being. Uh, and the religion, the prayer at the end was helped guide them back into that. It's a cliche, that path, that lane, that got them back in their lane. It was fascinating. It was there before, and then they went nuts on the field, and then it was over. They came back into the corral.
Interesting. What's the title of that old movie? Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, right? It's both. The crazy, yeah, yeah. For a lot of people, I think if you mention non-professional Texas football, the thing that may come to mind is high school ball, Friday Night Lights. And I'll admit when I first began reading the manuscript, I thought, portrait of Brenham, this team that is a central place in this really small town. Um, um, is going to remind me of Friday Night Lights, but it seemed through your telling that the team wasn't really as central to the experience of the people of Brenham as the Permian Panthers were in Friday Night Lights. I wonder if you can talk about that. And this isn't high school ball; it's semi-pro ball, and
Right.
a lot of people probably don't know much about that.
Wow. No, it's a really great question. I'm trying to think how to address it, whether to go, like pull to the left and address high school ball, or pull to the right and address the Texas Express. I find myself not so much wanting to answer your question as finding myself thinking about what is the difference. You're asking what was the difference in Brenham, and I can answer that easily, but what the question raised in my mind is what's how is the game different? And that's not your question, but
It's
the
part of
difference between a 16-year-old playing football and 25-year-old men is substantial. It's and that's what's fascinating to me about your question. Like, these small rural communities, worship, you know, high school football, boys football, you know, passionately, and to the detriment of the place, expectations, hopes on, upon the shoulders of extremely young developing adolescents. That's that's an intensity. That's quite a thing. And then, these fully grown men playing in the shadows, where there is no expectation, there are no spectators, there is no expectation of either victory or championships or trophies or uh, hierarchies. They're just out there play by play. Um, Really, it's pretty pure. It's pretty pure, and um, it, yeah, it's quite a different thing. I don't know if that's enough of an answer to your question. How does it differ, the Permian Panthers versus the Brenham Express, or Texas Express in Brenham? Kind of like night and day. Yeah.
well, I mean, it leads me to another question, and you've touched on this, which is for these 25-year-old men, what brought them out there, right? I mean, they're showing up on a Thursday night for practice, and then I guess it's Saturdays for games.
Yeah,
What
yeah. Thursday night practices and Saturday games. Yeah.
what brought them out there to do this?
Some of them had, high hopes and aspirations. They wanted to get a scholarship. They want to go play for a community college. They want to go play for a four-year college, in Division I, Division III, whatever. Um, some wanted to go further and play in elevated semi-pro leagues, or professional, fully professional leagues, the NFL, CFL. Um, so there was that. There were there weren't many of those caliber of players who had, legitimate cause or reason to strive for such a goal. A lot of them were in there because they loved football and didn't want to give it up. Um, a lot of them were there. I think my experience and perception was that they were there um, because it was the best thing in their lives. Have a community and a leader, a coach who cared about them, and that was its own addiction. And not not a bad one as far as addictions go. Put a lot of pressure on coach, but he chose it, and yeah, I would not have. Wouldn't have been my cup of tea. But
Right.
again, that's what made him so fascinating. Makes him so fascinating is that he uh, he signs up for a lot.
Yeah, it sounds that way. And you're right that he was working three jobs at the same time, right?
I think four. Yeah. Yeah,
Plus
four. As I
coaching. Plus coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. And speaks of a pretty incredible commitment on his part, to do this kind of work. I mean, one of my favorite chapters in the book actually is where you go riding with Coach along to one of his other jobs, which is he's the I guess the town or the county dog catcher, and he's
Yeah.
got all these dogs out in an enclosure down by the river, right? And he goes out there every day and feeds them and cares for them. And I mean, the way paint, the portrait of him doing this is a picture of real care, right? I mean, he cares about these animals, um, and I don't in any way want to create a parallel between coaching football and caring for a kennel full of dogs, but in both cases, he's really caring for, a group of, in some ways, unruly individuals, individual hearts and minds, right? And I wonder if why do these two things appeal to him?
No, absolutely. The the parables of the no one is irredeemable. Yeah, nothing and no one. And he yeah, he, walked the walk.
So in your portrait coach, you talk about how I think before you got there, he had coached the Express for 17 winning seasons, which is pretty amazing, right? And
It
then
is.
the year you got there, it kind of turned around, and they started losing. And I wonder, I'm sure you've thought about that. Have you talked to Coach about that? I'm sure he's got thoughts about it. What turns the team around like that?
Well, it's I did talk to him about it, and coach, and this is such a great blind spot of his. His opinion was his, and it's not inaccurate, was that they weren't coming to practice. The players weren't coming to practice. They just wanted to show up on the game and freelance, and get the ball in their hands or go after the ball. And while that's true, it's fascinating that he didn't ever complain that he only had 13 players, when the other teams he was playing had 60 or more. Such was his force of will and confidence in his mind that his schemes and plans would work with the 11 he put on the field, that he didn't really feel the need to have more players. He just wanted the players he had to be more committed and practiced, which is wonderfully laughable. I mean, the fourth quarter is not called the fourth quarter for nothing. But he he believed in his vision and his players, and the gripe he had was that they just weren't practicing enough, not that there weren't enough of them.
Yeah. Um, and some of them evidently, had some, you know, um, difficult lives and made, decisions off the field that got them in some trouble. I mean, one of your chapters, I think it's
Yeah.
chapter two, in fact, I think, takes place in a courtroom waiting for a player to show up, to plead his case, and he doesn't. Coach Barnes, how do you do? I'm Stephen Hull. I'm the director of University of New
Good,
Mexico.
Mr. Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, no, Rick and I have been talking and talking, a lot about you, as
Okay.
one of the key characters in this whole chronicle. And um, I had a bunch of questions for Rick, and then some for you, and some for both. And we've been talking about um, the players and your role here. And one of the things that Rick writes in the introduction is that, Rick, I already asked you about this, but I want to ask Coach. Um, the players loved the game but did not need it. What they needed, I think, was Coach. And how much pressure would that be for any of us? And Coach Barnes, I wonder if you can talk about that, the idea that these guys, these young men needed you.
Yes, sir. It was quite a few of them that did need me and Rick and Kirby as well, because we stood out as father figures for those guys. That was the biggest thing that we stood out for.
Sure. Um, I've um, I've asked Rick, but I'll also ask you about ways in which you think the game might be changing. Um, is that
Well,
your perception?
if I would tell you how the game has changed, it's got softer. It's not like it used to be. When I was coming up, man, playing the game, man, we had to be tough and we had to play it to the utmost ability. These guys nowadays, you can barely touch them and they fall down and flop on the ground. So that's one thing I can say about it now. It's just it's not like it used to be.
Well, I mean, Rick writes, of course, about himself, getting knocked down and,
Dropping on the ground.
but
Yeah.
you call him old man, right? And he was in his early 60s at the time. So, but the other guys were all in their 20s mostly, I guess. And, they got hurt too, though.
Yeah, but what that did when Rick did that, it ignited a spark in the team because he was 60 something years old trying to play running back, and he did a good job at it when I let him go in, because I was telling him, man, you're gonna get clobbered out there. And the guys got inspiration out of that. So I really think it was a plus for our team at that time.
That's interesting. So that actually, that's an interesting point, and that leads me to another question that I asked Rick before, but I'll ask you. So what role did Rick play on the team? I mean, obviously he was there to write about you guys, but then he suited up and went on the field. How did you use him? Like, when did you put him in? What did
We
you do?
use Rick on special teams when the other guys got tired, and just different things like that. When you had young men that didn't want to go in, Rick would go in and say, "Hey, man, let's go, guys," and then they'd see Rick go in, and they wanted to play then. And then several games I played too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So that's pretty smart of you then. Rick as motivational device, right, for the team.
Oh yeah.
Um, so at the time that Rick is writing about here, which is, I guess about 5 years ago, around COVID time, he says that you were working 3 jobs plus coaching the team. So, the simple question is, how do you have time to do that?
Well, I could ask my wife that, man. That was crazy. Well, it was just like God Himself had just placed me in that position at that time, to help those young men and to do it. And one day I was at the track running bleachers, and nobody had showed up to practice. And I went up and come back down. And I said, Lord, I'm tired of this, And He said, well, if not you, then who? And I said, okay. And then He turned right back around, and 2, 3 people came, and He said, I've never given up on you. So I couldn't give up on those guys. So that's why we kept going.
It sounds like you have some consciousness um, of God in your coaching on the field, with these young men. Um, can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I tell them all the time, in the Bible, it tells you you can't get bitter and sweet water from the same fountain. But in that line of work, playing football, you have to be bitter and you have to be sweet at the same time. Encourage them. And then, you have to chew them out too in order to get a light of fire on them. Ain't that right, Rick? Got a light of fire on them sometimes.
You're extremely good at that, Coach. Yeah, and something we haven't talked about, Stephen, is just the finesse of your coaching. It's like it's a student loves a good teacher, and just the way you would teach technique and set up, the cones for the linebacker drills. Even if you're not a linebacker, learning how linebackers technique succeeds or fails helps everybody, helps every individual position. And that was always the best part of practice when Coach would teach something. Hearing you talk about it, Stephen, I mean, like Coach took care of their spiritual lives, and Kirby, took care of their knees and ankles and
Fingers and everything else.
broken bones. Yeah, it was kind of a caretaking mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Rick, during the time that you were with the team, writing about the team, playing with the team, you spent time, you and Coach spent time together. I wonder, is there anything that you would like to ask him now? Anything questions you may still have for him?
That's a great question. I mean, Coach, to be so complicated, you don't ever hold any cards down on the table. So, like, I think I know what Coach is going to say about anything. I got to know Coach really, really well, and a lot of respect and admiration for, uh, it's adversity is gives a portrait of who a person is, and we had some adversity that year.
Yes, we did a lot. You had a lot of guys that wanted to go against the grain. Each time you told them something, they rebelled, and it almost played out just like in the Bible, Samson versus Goliath, So it is it's something.
Coach, sorry, go ahead.
I said David versus Goliath. I meant not Samson, but David versus Goliath a lot of times.
Yeah, I think Samson was versus Delilah, right?
Yeah. Well, that too. We had a lot of that going on too. We had women out there that, that the guys, we'd have to tell them from time to time, hey man, your girl don't need to be out here. We can't watch your girl and another guy on the sideline, and all that kind of stuff like that. We had a lot going on. But we handle it.
Was any of that particular to this team? I mean, in the book, it comes out that I think you had 17 winning seasons prior to this team, right? Was this team different?
Uh-huh. Well, they're all different. They're all different. I don't kind of we can't compare them as much because each year you get a different crop of guys, and it comes from the high school learning or the college learning, or even we had a couple of guys that come from Canada to play for us. They heard about it. So each one has a different format. You have guys that that should have been starters. They were starters at another school or something. So they had to take a step back, and then they come to the Texas Express and they say, everybody starts over here. We don't hold nobody out or anything like that. We try to lift them up and everything that they had going on. I've had several players that went on to play at A&M or play at Abilene Christian. Not because they weren't good, but because they just were looked over.
Right.
Give them that chance.
Coach, how did you first get involved coaching the Express? I mean, and what was your life in football like prior to coaching the Express?
Well, if we want to go back, it's a long road. I started out playing football when I was like 5 years old. I was packing that thing at 5, and I always wanted to play. And we left Texas. My stepdad was in the military, and I went to Fort Ord, California. And that was the first time I stepped on a football field then. And I just took off from there. And as I got older, I come back here to Belleville, Texas, and play for the Belleville Bramers. And all my life, I've been a starter. We've been winners. From the 7th grade, we only lost one game. 8th grade, we only lost one game. As a freshman, I was on varsity. I played against Johnny Holland, Lance Pavlis from A&M. I've played with Kenneth Hackemack from the University of Texas, Edward Simmons from the University of Texas, Keon Banks from San Francisco 49ers. I've played with a whole bunch of great athletes, and during all this time, I had went and tried out the Dallas Cowboys, and I think it was like 88 or 89, something like that. And at that time, they had the triplets. Aikman and Emmett and Irvin say they're the triplets, but they're really not. Quincy Carter, Anthony Wright, and Tony Banks were the first 3 black quarterbacks ever to be on an NFL team at one time. And I was there then, and I had a guy, his name was Rance Olson, and he was the quarterback coach at that time. And so he saw me play against the San Antonio Stars, in which the team I played for was the Katy Cowboys at that time, was in minor league football. And the first play of the game, the coach said, "Get in there, Barnes, and see what's going on." And I got in there, and the guy, he was like about 6'4", about 260, running the ball. He ran over me like a Mack truck. So after that, I went back in the game and knocked him out the game. And so Rance Olson called me, and he called Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown was the guy's name. Bobby Jones, rather. Bobby Jones was his name. And he told me, say, man, I need to have Barnes in Cowboy camp. As a matter of fact, we were in the playoff and got ready to play them. and he saw me there, and he asked me, said, "Man, why are you not in the camp? I had sent a letter to Bobby Jones to tell you to be there." And man, all hell broke loose. I got upset, mad, and everything. And so after that game, I said that I was not going to let anyone else that I knew of that had a chance to make it to the NFL get done like I was done. And so I started a team with Elijah Williams called the Gladiators first. Elijah Williams and Fred Williams. We played at the Gladiators for, I guess, about 3 years. And then we left and we started the Express. And we've been Express ever since.
Wow. Wow. And now, are you still coaching the Express?
Oh yeah, we starting back right now. We start after my birthday on August 15th. That week, the next weekend after, we starting back up. We had several seasons that we start off with, and other teams that came up were just out of control. So I told my guys, if y'all cannot stop interacting with these other teams, we're not going to play. And so I punished them for 2 years, and now we're coming back.
Wow. Well, happy birthday coming up.
Thank you.
So in, Rick, Wrecking Ball, I mean, you write about,
Haven't read it yet. Wait, for Rick.
I'm sure Rick will send you a signed copy. You write about the game as a living system, and I think that also describes the book, right? I mean, there are many parts that
Yeah.
come to tell this complex story, and about the players, about yourself, right? Coming back as a player, but the central figure is coach, right? I mean, he's the coach. You're the tent pole around all of this revolves. And I don't know. I wonder if either of you can sort of elaborate on that.
Well, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, no, I think a tent pole is a good analogy. I mean, it's like the play caller in the huddle. Coach gave us our orders, and we went out and sought to execute them, to the best of our abilities. And I was telling Stephen earlier that you have really high standards and expectations. You expected success, and
Yeah.
it's exhilarating when you achieve it, when a play goes exactly the way it was diagrammed, and it's excruciating when it's fractured or broken prematurely and doesn't get to where the concept was going. That I was telling Stephen, that's really familiar to me as a writer. I mean, the great thing about writing, Flannery O'Connor said, "I don't like writing, I like having written." And it's like winning. You feel great when you win, but there's also a quality of relief, like, damn, I didn't lose. That's awesome.
Yes. But the tent pole statement is awesome, because I do feel like sometimes I'm their shelter, in a time of a storm, But I know the ultimate shelter is God Himself, and He keeps me covered too. Because if they get into an altercation out there, I'm the first one out there trying to break it up. Even if they have problems off the field, I try to help them. So I mean, that's just the way it goes. That's just part of life. You must help somebody. That's the key.
Coach, when Rick told you he was writing a book about the team and about his experience, with the team, what was your initial reaction?
Go ahead. That sounds cool.
Coach would introduce me as his biographer, which I guess it kind of turned out that way.
Yeah.
To a large extent, I think that's true. Another question for Coach: What do you think the players believed in? Did they have like real belief in their own abilities? Were they
Yeah.
out there work? Did they believe in you? What did they believe in?
They believed in me. They believed in themselves. Once we got them, it's just like a well-oiled machine. Once you get it going and they can see what they can do, and like me and Rick used to do, we get out there and demonstrate ourselves. Sometimes we wouldn't have but like maybe 8 to 10 guys at practice. We get out there and interact in practice too. And I always said this, as if I was to be a high school coach or college coach or whatever, you got to be in shape yourself. You got to be able to demonstrate. And how kids and young men react to you is how you can do the position. Can you do it? Can get you telling me to do it? Can you do it? You know, I have a lot of guys like that. You know, man, I don't see you doing it. You can't do it. Oh yeah, I can. That's why I'm going to show you. You know, and that's why they get their inspiration from Rick too. You know, Rick was 60 something years old. I can do it. Let's do this, guys. And you know, a lot of them, you know, they would do it. You have to realize two things. One man never knows what goes on in another man's home. Number two, you don't know what these kids are going through or have been through, which would be three. You don't know what they've been through either. You don't even know where they're living at. Some of them live in their cars, some of them live on the streets. You just never know. And so that's what the team was formed about, to help them.
Yeah. It seems like some of these young men had some troubles.
Yeah.
I think there's one quote of Rick's in the quoting you, saying, 9 incarcerations, only 2 to the Grim Reaper.
Well, it's 5 to penitentiary and 4 to the Grim Reaper.
4, okay. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, that might reflect some of the time that's passed since.
Well, it's okay. I mean, matter of fact, we were getting ready to go into our season, I think in like 2000, and my cousin got killed right in front of me. You know, he had a head-on collision on my way to work one morning. You know, and he was our quarterback. He was one of the best quarterbacks that we had at that time. You know, so it's been a lot of adversities, and I had one player that got killed behind his tennis shoes. You know, he was selling shoes out of his trunk, and the guys come up to him and shot and killed him. You know, so it's a lot.
One of the things that stands out to me about this book, and I've never seen a semi-pro game, I'm a casual watcher of the NFL, and that's about it, is it really helps me understand the game, understand the way all the pieces fit together, and
Yes.
how if one thing goes wrong, the whole tapestry unravels right there in front of you on the field. And I think it also imparts, Rick, you said before that you love the game, right? And that comes through. And I think that's something that you impart to the readers in this book. And not just your love of the game, but it helps me love the game, right? It gives me a fresh appreciation, helps me love the game. And I thank you for that, as both the editor, but also, a reader of this book. It's really a fresh perspective on mostly young men, yourself accepted, engaged in this joint enterprise under the leadership of coach, but once they're on the field, anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Right.
And yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, the other thing it reminds me of a little bit, although this feels much more organic, is George Plimpton's great old book, Paper Lion, where he went in as a reporter in the mid 60s and, tried to play with the Detroit Lions. But that was staged, right? I mean, that was a stunt. This wasn't a stunt.
No, Rick wasn't a stunt.
No. I mean, you came on the field at need and out of love for the game, and it was 100% genuine every time, even when you got your ass run over like a Mack truck.
No, my head went all the way back to my spine. It was the most violent thing I've ever experienced. Yeah, but back to the theme, Coach was there to take care of the young men's lives, and Kirby was there to physically repair them when they got broken. That Baytown game, I came off the field after the first hard hit and thought, cracked ribs, and I asked Kirby, how do I know if if I punctured a lung? And he goes, well, you'll start peeing orange. And it's like, that's not what you want to hear somebody say. It's not something you want to even think about.
Yeah. Yeah, and other than that, there's not much you can do for a cracked rib either. You just live with the pain for,
That's it.
yeah.
One time he step out on the field, I'd get squeamish and scared for him. I say, Rick, you sure you going? I'm going, coach. I said, okay.
Well, that actually raises a really good question, Coach. Did you kind of, order Rick out on the field to, plug a hole or fill a need, or, were you nervous for him?
Oh yeah, I was nervous for him every time he went out there. But he wanted to go. So I don't deny anybody if they want to go. So let him go, And I look at it like this, what he did, it could have been his last time. It could have been his bucket list, whatever. I didn't know Rick from A to Z at first. So, that's what he wanted to do. So the guys rallied around him and, hey, he went out there.
No, and I'm really grateful for that. I mean, Kirby, I talked to Kirby about it, and Kirby, just not somebody practiced at saying no. He said, yeah, sounds like a great idea. Go ask coach. And I thought, well, coach is going to say no. I was worried it would have a negative effect on the team. They think, oh, it is a stunt. And coach didn't even blink, said, no, if you sure, come on. And I'm really grateful for both of those yeses.
And it seems like the fact that, your desire, your, willingness to do this was a real additive factor for the team and motivating factor for the team. So
yeah, all the young men rallied around him. Remember Rick, we went to we had I can't think of it right now. Portland. Remember we went to Portland. We got ass handed to us that night.
Boy, I do.
Stepchildren.
I remember that. I sure do. I have dreams about that game. Yeah. that was a rough one.
Yes.
Well, you do write about the disparities within the league between some of the teams and towns like cities like big cities, San Antonio, Austin, etc., versus Brenham as a culture of sort of haves and have-nots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, coach, you made do with not much. Other teams had a lot more to work with.
Oh yeah. Well, what I did, I mean, I'll have to say it again. God allowed me to get it. I got scraps from everywhere I could find them, and put it together so that they could have a place to play. I didn't have much money. My wife supported me. My children supported me. My family, my whole entire family, they supported me. So, I mean, again, God allowed us to do what we had to do. A lot of times we didn't have enough money because the players didn't have enough money, and quiet as kept. I never told my wife. I used to come out of my own pocket with a lot of it, because we wanted to play and I wanted to see them play.
I guess theoretically the players were paid right out of gate receipts, but at one point you were right, there weren't any gate receipts.
That's it. And most of the time the referees' fees were like $400 and $500. If you get 4 refs, it's $400. If you get 5 refs, it's $500. And we come up with, half of it. You got some guys, that just along for the ride and say, oh man, well, I don't have it, And then you got guys that, hey man, coach, I got my money this week, stuff like that. So it's just one of those things.
And a coach, your wife would, do the laundry where we'd have our jerseys clean and spread them out on the grass to pick our jerseys out. And over the course of the season, those jerseys were getting more and more abraded. And yeah, there were no new shiny white or navy blue jerseys for us. They got ragged over the course of the season, but they were always clean to start with.
Yes, indeed. I sold quite a few of them up too.
Well, it's really a portrait of sort of people's football. No sponsorships, no money, no.
Well, I've had several, like my old principal, he used to give me about $200, and a guy that I worked for like 12 years, he give me like $200. But in order for a team to run and be successful, you have to have at least 10 grand to make it be successful. And I've been doing this for like 21 years, and I've never got that close. I might have had 5,000, but 10, nah, none of that. We have some teams that travel on buses and different things like that, so we get vans and we carpool.
Yep. And over those 21 years, you've had a lot of success.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's just all about God, man. He's the key. You know, he's the key. And I always tell these guys, I mean, we're God's first creation. Mankind is. Man is. So he wants to, it brings mankind together. Football brings mankind together. Any sport brings mankind together, and he loves that togetherness.
Well, that might be a pretty good note to wrap it up on, unless there's anything else that either of you want to say.
Well, I'm good. Rick, you look pretty good, man. You look all right. You ready to come back?
No, sir.
Well,
I still hurt, Coach. It's been 5 years. I still hurt.
Imagine.
I believe it. The way you write about some of the hits you took, I absolutely believe it. So the book is Wrecking Ball: Race, Friendship, God, and Football by Rick Bass, author of something like 30 books at this point, right? Published by the University of New Mexico Press. I'm Stephen Holm, the director of the press, and I've been privileged to talk with Rick and Coach Anthony Barnes from the Brenham Express semi-professional football team. And thank you both very much. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen, and my best friend Kirby Simmons for getting me into this jackpot. And Coach, again, thank you, and the team. Tell the fellas hi and thank you. And I'll get a book in the mail as soon as I have one. And everybody out there who hears us, if you're near Brenham, go watch an Express game. It's a show in town.
Texas Express, not Brenham Express, Texas Express.
Gotcha.
We want to be all well known all over Texas, and we used to be feared in Texas.
Very good.
I predict you will be again. Your defenses were impenetrable.
Thank you, sir.
The book again is Wrecking Ball, out September 2nd. Look for it everywhere. And thank you both.